Welcome to One-on-One with Crosby Selander. We are here tonight to talk about the state of the industry with Crosby, and I'm going to do a quick little intro of these guys. Matt Misetich, in case you don't know him, he is my boss, and he's executive director and partner at Pipeline Media Group, and he oversees everything: script pipeline, book pipeline, film pipeline, has a podcast, Pipeline Artists, this symposium. And Crosby Selander is a Los Angeles-based screenwriter and filmmaker. He received a double BA from New York University and his MFA from Carnegie Mellon University, where he was a recipient of the Shubert Fellowship. After placing as a finalist in the Script Pipeline Feature Contest, his screenplay Bring Me Back, currently set up at Legendary, went on to become the largest spec sale of 2020. Crosby went on to develop the Hugo-winning novel The Forever War for TV alongside director Francis Lawrence for Village Roadshow and served in the feature writing room for the MATCHBOX movie for Skydance. He has projects in active development at Lab Brew 193 and Weed Road. His short films have played at the Santa Barbara International Film Festival, Holly Shorts, and dozens of other film festivals around the world. He's been featured in Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, Deadline, and China Daily, among others. He's repped for film and TV at UTA and Kaplan Perone Entertainment. So I am impressed, first of all, but I'm also going to slide off so Matt can take over and talk to you, and I'll be back. But I'm still here.
She's going to be impressed off camera. Before we dig into things, I keep telling people too that, you were one of the, there's been maybe one or two, I think, since, but there's really only been a handful of screenwriters in the history of Hollywood who have sold a spec for, seven figures or, low seven figures, mid seven figures or whatever. Not mid seven figures. Anyway, let's cut this out. Can we edit it, Jeannie? No, she's not going to pop back.
No, it's permanent. Everything is
good. Thank you for letting me know it's permanent. There hasn't been that many people to sell a spec in the seven-figure range who have previously been unproduced and unsold. So you were one of the very, very few, which is a big moment, and I should have worded it better. But it's been a long day, so
it has.
It's been a long decade, for that matter. I'm going to touch upon a few questions of my own, and like Jeannie mentioned, we'll open it up maybe the second half hour, if not a little bit earlier. But before we get to that, I just wanted to get kind of a brief history of how you got here. Just like the very broad stroke stuff is fine. From the moment you finished Bring Me Back, which is the screenplay that you placed with in 2020 and that later sold to Legendary. To now, the present day. Again, you don't have to go into too much detail, but that's just the general. Give us the general.
Yeah, I have to go into the detail of how it sold because it sold on my wife's due date.
Yes,
so
please do tell that.
She was 9 months pregnant,
right?
Very pregnant, and I'm going. She's like upstairs lying down, and I'm like going up and being like, hey, like, this is what the new number is. And, at a certain point, when it got past midnight, she went, leave me alone. I'm very pregnant. I'm like, what are you doing? And that decision and deal closed at like 2 a.m. And then my wife's water broke on Monday, and I was driving. We were in New York still, and so I was driving over the Brooklyn Bridge because it broke when she was at the hospital. So I was going back to go get bags and put our dog in overnight care. When my manager called and said, oh, there was the article on Deadline. And I started crying because I was on the Brooklyn Bridge getting this news, my wife's water having just broken. So it was a life-changing week. It's weird now to have an almost 5-year-old and be able to look at my son and be like, oh, my career is as old as my firstborn, in like a very real way. It's a surreal thing. From there, listen, there was a lot of work that I've had to do for Legendary. And it led to, this other job for Village Roadshow and this incredible experience of working with Francis Lawrence on my favorite sci-fi novel, and very unfortunately, Village Roadshow went out of business right as we were out pitching it and right as we were about to have bids coming in. And it's the type of story that I don't want to get into too much detail in this forum,
Yeah.
But it's the type of story that I think you collect in this business because it is the Wild West.
Right.
Um,
It is
and
your favorite novel. How did that come about? Just by chance?
it came about that same first week. My manager, I literally spoke to him in the hospital, and he went, "Everyone's calling me about you right now. What can I go and get you?" And I'm like, delirious. I haven't slept. And the only thing I could think of was the Forever Wharf. And so he went out and he found the producers my very first meeting.
Amazing. Yeah.
And that, and eventually they had already hired a writer, but I just kept in touch. And said, I love this, let me know, let me know, let me know. And
Right.
the other writer fell off, had to go do something else, and they didn't even talk to anyone else. I had to go through 4 rounds of interviews, but the job was mine. So yeah.
It's a rare one. And the timing was impeccable. I remember when you called me, if I may say, your voice was shaking a little bit on the call. You still seemed either tired or nervous or both. Because you would call me like a Saturday, afternoon Pacific time. And I had to ask you to repeat the number because I couldn't quite believe it. We had only had one big multi-million-dollar spec sale from a pipeline writer up to that point with Evans, Evan Doherty, Snow White and the Huntsman.
Yeah.
And that had been, several years prior, right? Uh, it's not, I didn't want to, uh, I didn't want to set the expectation for new writers that like this was a common thing either. So like when we put that news out there, I was very careful to remember how to word it to just to show people how rare and special that actually is.
I,
So
I mean, there's an agent, a friend of mine, not my agent, but just like an agent friend of mine
mhm.
that I knew, that basically said to me, like, this doesn't happen to people.
Yeah.
You have won the lottery of lotteries, for this to happen. And I'm very aware of that. And like, there's a lot of luck in anything in life, but certainly in this business,
Mhm.
there's a lot of luck involved, and there's a lot of times where you do great work and it just doesn't translate into an opportunity.
Right.
And here's the thing: I've had that experience after breaking in, where I've done great work and it didn't translate into the opportunity that I want, and I kind of had to take the lesser win. I had to take the lesser win and the experience and the contact and the money that it brought and move on.
Explain what you mean by the lesser win, because I think that's important too.
Well, because I think people always sort of focus on the big win. So having this TV show fall apart in, catastrophic fashion because the studio goes under, is not the type of thing that you expect to happen.
No.
And the big win would have obviously been having my own TV show that would get to go make with this incredible director and unbelievable producers. But the lesser win was that I got to develop this with Francis. I got to forge a relationship with him and his company. I got paid to work on my favorite book of all time,
Mhm.
and I learned a hell of a lot. And I think that's what you have to focus on is the things that you do get out of something, even if it doesn't bring everything that you want, uh,
Mhm.
out of the experience.
On the learning note, so like when you first got repped and you go through all these hoops of the Bring Me Back deal, um, what was the sort of, or I guess, was there any sort of culture shock of being repped and going on meetings and all that, since it really did happen fast? Uh, being asked
Yes.
like, "Hey, pick a property that you want to adapt, and we'll go find it for you," which
Uh,
is insane.
yeah, I mean, that's a pretty insane thing, I think, to say. I mean, this is also, the Aaron Kaplan, started Kaplan Perone. He's had his own company for over 20 years, right? I don't this was a kind of a new experience for him too. When they were out there talking to people and having bids come in, they were like, we're having a lot of fun, right?
Right.
Um, they're I don't think for him he's ever been able to like necessarily pick up the phone, go after a project like that, right? So it's a rare thing, and moments like that. By the way, I've also learned, that there are, and I've talked to showrunner, I've talked to a lot of different types of writers, and it's like there's the ebbs and flows that come in the career, in the same way that there's the ebbs and flows that come in the work and the process of it, right? Like sometimes
Right.
you sit down and you'll get so much done in 30 minutes, and other times, you'll write 10 pages in 30 minutes, and other times you'll sit down for a full day and you'll have less pages than you started with after working for 5 hours. And I think it's like that with a career as well. There's a showrunner I was talking to about this that was about to have 2 or 3 different shows go right before the strike, and then boom, didn't have anything for like a year,
Yeah.
and lost all the shows, and now she's starting to get back into this sort of this rhythm and routine, and hoping that the flow is going to pick up again. So heat in this business is a big thing, I think, to reps.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, heat is only going to take you so far, and it's always once you've gotten past the hurdle of getting into the business, good work will always bring about new attention. And I think that that's what working writers rely on, is they go, okay, I'm in a little bit of an ad break here, but that's
Right.
okay. I can focus on my work.
And you're able to, I mean, you've been doing it long enough now for 5 years where you can kind of ride that wave.
Yeah.
Most of the attendees here tonight, or I would assume 100% of them, are writers. What can they do to kind of prepare for that day of getting repped? Like what sort of, plans can they make ahead of time? Whether it's coming up with commercial concepts, which I think is uh, shockingly overlooked sometimes,
Yeah.
to continuously writing and more output, as far as scripts and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few different things. One is like, first off, if you can't tell your own story, then they're not going to trust you they're not going to trust you to tell any story. So that's part of it, is that, I mean, by the way, I'm going to go through, like, obviously, like, you've got to be a good writer,
Yeah.
at the end of the day. But I want to go through some of the things that maybe you wouldn't think of first off, right?
Right.
But at the end of the very first thing that happens when somebody reads you and they like your work, right? And by the way, that's the barrier, right? Is like an exec has to read you and like the work in order for them to want to meet with you. But the next step is to meet with you and to see whether you're a human being, whether you're a person that can have a conversation, whether you're a person
Right.
that they're going to want to work with for 3 months, and pay
Right.
5 or 6 figures, right, to rewrite something, right? These are big stakes, as far as execs go, and and their budgets, and their careers are tied to having good scripts come out of the people that they hire. So there are things about those general meetings. There is a structure to those general meetings, and you need to come in being able to talk about yourself, who you are, what makes you special and memorable, and how you ended up becoming a writer, what brought you to the writing. You need to come in still seeing stuff, still being excited about, things that are out there. One of the questions you always get is like, what are you watching? Right? What are you watching? And for me, those are like the big 2 things. And then like those always get covered. And then the meeting can go a number of different ways. And you can like, it's just a regular conversation. But if you come in with those things or those anecdotes, right, that you have ready to go, and I'll give an example, which is I oftentimes will bring up how at the age of 11, I found the meaning of life in Sam Goody. And I was like, oh, thank God, finally, I found it. And an
Don't age
hour
yourself or anything.
right? Like, because it's like that's what drives me so much. And after an hour of my introduction to Monty Python, I went, okay, I get it. But so much of that is like who I am. Even as a kid, I was like trying to figure out how everything is structured, and it drives so much of my writing. And that little anecdote, like, it hasn't come up in every general meeting, but I was meeting with the director I'm working with on Bring Me Back, and that came up, just yesterday, because it helps to sort of like describe
The idea of structure you're talking about?
what?
The idea of structure you're talking
Well,
about?
no, the idea of like I personally am motivated by like
Oh,
trying to figure out how like all of existence is structured.
right.
And in terms of bring me back, that's a big part of it, right? Because it uses
Yeah.
theory and um, so again, that's like an anecdote that I use in a general meeting when they ask about the types of things that I like to write or what drove me towards the writing.
Yeah, and that's exactly my next question. So excellent segue. What drew us to Bring Me Back is, and we typically do this every year. I mean, we kind of lean into the more ambitious scripts that are kind of bolder and more challenging to write. And this was, we don't have to get into the plot and the premise of it, but this was definitely an ambitious, like big, fun, emotional script. And that's hard to do. When it comes to concept generation, like what's your process? And I suppose everyone has their own, individual way of coming up with ideas, but what's a good tip for somebody to give them a head start on writing something that managers are going to be excited to send out and producers are going to be excited to work on?
Yeah, it's got to be commercial. I think at the end of the day, because agents and managers are driven by the possibility of selling something. Um, I think for TV, there's still very much like some value in a sample where
Right.
it's like that pilot is unproducible, but man, can that person write? We should hire them for the show. Versus like on the screenwriting side, having a sample isn't as valuable because
Not anymore. That's for sure.
not anymore because an
No.
agent and a manager can't sell that.
Right.
Um, it's unfortunately like this really annoyingly small target that if you hit, you're almost certainly going to get a sale, which is like
Yeah.
a weird thing to say out loud, but um,
It's true. I mean, the last month I've had manager friends asking desperately in some cases for like, give me a really fun action script. Horror's super hot right now. Give me a fun horror script. I'm like, here, read these. And they're like, it's not fun. I'm like, all right. And it is an annoyingly small target, but when you do hit it, things move shockingly fast, I
yeah,
think.
yeah, and I mean it's also about, and again, there's luck involved. This is not an objective business. It's just not.
Yeah. Right.
They will bring in screenwriters that, Oscar-winning screenwriters to do a polish just so that their name is on the draft that goes out to actors, right? Because
Mm,
that seeing, that on the cover page changes the read for people because it's not
yeah.
objective. And so that, that is what it is. Again, like Bring Me Back is a script that got passed on by a manager even before Python.
We've sent out to a few managers and it got passed before we hit with Kaplan, so.
Yeah, I mean, some people didn't get
Right.
it, um, and that's what it is. It's 100% what it is. So there is luck involved in it finding its way into the right hands. The beautiful thing is, I think also about writing a script is like you can finish it and you can keep advocating it while you work on something new.
Hmm.
And you can keep pushing it, especially if you think that you have found that sweet spot, keep getting it out there. And I think the worst case scenario is that you've written something and learned from it. In terms of like what the ideas are that are going to be hitting the sweet spot, like, again, I think a lot of people think that if they write like a $1 to $5 million indie darling that is
Yeah.
like about identity, that's going to be, because they look at something
Right.
like Moonlight or something like that, which is an incredible film, but it's like that's a film that gets made because there's a filmmaker behind it.
It's an auteur film. Yeah.
There's an auteur film,
Right.
like, and also, that isn't necessarily made at the studio level where there's like a certain amount of money that they want to put into something in order for it to be worth their time that they're going to spend because they're only going to have so many films, right? And then if they
Yeah.
have, all $1 to $5 million films, it's like, well, what do we need this mega corporation behind us for? What do we need all of this money sitting around, right?
Totally.
So like,
And we're not knocking, just to be clear, we're not knocking dramas here either. I totally agree with what you're saying. And it's not the fact that it's a particular genre. We've set up really good drama scripts with managers over the last 4 or 5 years, but they've all had a little high concept hook to it. It wasn't this sort of quiet, low concept thing. It has to feel fresh and exciting somehow still.
Yes, and there has to be that, like, are people going to want to see this?
Yeah.
And I think it's also about writing toward, like, if you're in a certain genre, are you within the budget range? I had a friend of mine from grad school reach out recently. I had a friend that wrote $150 million, budget rom-com,
Mhm.
and I went, that's not gonna fly.
Right.
That will never
It's
make its
a
money
little
back. You'll never
pricey for a
I mean,
rom-com.
it's and it's the type of thing that it's like, that's something that you can immediately just eliminate and not write. Just don't write it, because it's not gonna help you. That maybe
Yeah.
they'll read, and let's say they realize it 8 pages into the read, then they'll stop reading. But if they realize it, God forbid, they realize it's 60 pages into the read and they realize that this is a
Right.
$150 million film, and then they never want to talk to you again because you've just wasted an hour of their life.
Right. Yeah.
I think you should be mindful of, like, all right, romances, let's say, what was the Anne Hathaway romance, and I'm forgetting the name of it right now, but, like, look at that, and, like, look at what the budget is, and be
Yeah.
like, okay, like, I need to be coming in, and also, like, that's based on a book, so maybe don't write those on spec, just straight romance,
Right.
because there's so many books, and they'd much rather start with a book with that. But the point is like, if you're in a certain genre, think about the films that are getting made in that genre and how much they cost, and
Mm-hmm.
try not to be too far outside of that budget.
Yeah.
And by the way, like, your idea still gets to be wide open.
Mm-hmm.
But the constraints here are, like, you have to imagine the possibility of this being made, because if you can't imagine that, then a manager or an agent can't imagine that, and then they're not going to try to go and sell it.
Right. It's very rare. Just going back really quick to like the stunt script. We used to call it fuck it scripts, but I think the definition has changed over the years. But the stunty script that's just gonna like get on the blacklist, the annual blacklist, get some attention. There's still some value to that, but my idea is if you're gonna do that, just write something that's commercial and also that. You can have the best of both worlds, and you've doubled your chances theoretically, right?
Well, also, if you're trying to make the blacklist, you probably already have reps. Otherwise, how are you going to make the blacklist?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm talking about, like, hey, if you don't have reps, right? If you write that, like, fuck it script that they know would be, like, great on the blacklist, okay, maybe they take you on.
Yeah.
Maybe,
Big
but
maybe.
I mean, and by the way, there are those reps to take on new writers to position to get them on the blacklist.
Yeah.
But not everyone does.
It's a very small group of reps, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
I will say too, and I know, like, again, everyone here is a writer. People who will be listening to this in the future are writers. I know it's a rigid system that we have, especially from the novelist coming from publishing, which is also a relatively rigid system, but also like not at all as strict, quote unquote, a film industry, right? You have a lot more leeway in your storytelling. Budget isn't a concern, obviously, unless it comes down to like word count and page length. I know that there's those hurdles, but you just kind of have to game the system in a way. Don't write what you feel comfortable writing, but if you only want to write dramas, you can write a commercial drama, you can write a commercial anything, to at least increase your chances of getting a rep. I had another point to that, but it's probably longer, and I should just get to my final question before we get to the other questions. But you had one more comment though.
It shouldn't change your voice, is what you're saying, right?
Correct. Yeah, for sure.
Don't change your voice. Just, it's still your voice, but it takes so long to write a screenplay. Please set yourself up for success by saying, hey, does this have a possibility of being made? Because if it doesn't, because it's too expensive or it's too small, and I should say, a possibility of being made at a studio, right? Because that's where they're looking to sell it to. That Yeah, and
Yeah,
again, budget and all of those things need to be taken into account.
yeah. The other quick point I want to make too, the strike put a lot of writers out of work for many, many months, and a lot of them haven't recovered, right?
Yeah,
It was the same is true for managers. Some managers left the industry entirely. A lot of them were struggling. A lot of them are still struggling. Even the higher profile ones, I'm sure, were, they took a big hit. And that alone is going to fuel this desire to have, like, give me something that's ready to go out tomorrow, rather than, okay, this needs some development, but let me sign them and then we'll work on it for 6 months. I feel like that, unfortunately, is a lot rarer now than it was pre-strike, and really totally different than it was, I think, 15 years ago, where managers would be like, oh, this is a great sample. Now let's write something completely new and then take that out. There's more of a sense of urgency, and I get it. I'm not, criticizing the managers either. So open up to questions, but let me ask you one quick one. It's not a quick one, but we'll say. And I don't even know if it's a question you're able to answer, but writers ask me all the time how to find a manager, and that I should be the perfect person to ask. And I'm like, I don't know, queries and referrals and uh, winning or placing in a fellowship or a reputable competition or something like that, where you're going to get that introduction, which I guess falls under the referrals category. But we don't have that process that we do in publishing, where it's very linear, right? Like, you write a book, you get your query together, you query this agent, this agent, this agent based on their preferences, which is readily available information all over the internet. And there's a million lit agent options, right? And then they sign you, and then they go out on sub to publishers. This is, you mentioned the Wild West. It's still the Wild West in the film industry, and it hasn't gotten any better. In fact, it's gotten kind of worse in terms of,
yeah.
like, that process. So I know how you got repped, because you placed and you signed with Kaplan Pro and sold a spec a week later, inexplicably.
Well, no, it
But
wasn't a week later, and I did a small rewrite as well.
yeah.
There was a few months because I got signed in the summer, and then they waited till the fall because
Well,
there's
I'm
some,
being hyperbolic at the end of summer
of course.
here. Why not? No, it wasn't instant, but it was relative. I mean, it was,
Yeah, it was pretty quick. Yeah.
pretty quick. Yeah. So what's,
So
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
how to find? I mean, it's all of those same things. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's probably actually really useful to say that when I placed as a finalist, I had 4 different manager meetings, and they all came about in different ways.
Uh-huh.
One was set up through you guys.
Right.
One was through cold queries.
Okay.
I sent out about 20 queries, and I got one response from one meeting off of that. And by the way, my query, very specific. I talked about a script on the blacklist for a writer that I really loved, that a writer of his for a writer he represents, that
Uh-huh.
had been written 3 years ago, and that I thought that I was similar to this writer, and that I thought that he would, like my work as a consequence of repping somebody similar. So I was very
Oh,
specific and targeted in my query.
smart.
And I
Yeah.
did 20 queries like that, which took like 3 days of
Right.
work. Including like literally reading some of the blacklist scripts to be able to talk specifically about things, or like
Yeah.
why I thought that they like. So I got very targeted, and you get better. I had a very high response rate. I think I had a 30% response rate in like a week or two period as a consequence.
Wow. Yeah.
So there is a right way to query.
I
And
have kind
then
of a basic question on that, and I know this was 5 years ago, and the
yeah,
landscape has changed. How did you find the companies that were open to queries, the management companies?
the management companies that were open to queries
Or
because
did you just email?
they don't have the information out there, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's where it's like Hollywood is more of a rule breaking, not following the rules industry.
Right.
So it's about figuring out their email and
Hmm.
email. You're not calling them,
Right.
and they can
No,
go,
don't do that.
oh, they can get 2 sentences in and go, screw this. Maybe you pinged their phone at the wrong time, and that's bad luck. But
Right.
it's a pretty non-invasive thing. And I've learned that it's like it's kind of okay to cold query somebody and to have not had their email before, and it's fine.
And these
Uh,
20 companies, these were all management companies?
yes, they were all managers.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's important too.
manager before agent for sure.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
None of you should be querying I don't want to say none because there's no absolutes in the industry, but I really don't think anybody should be querying agents right now. I think you really need a manager. It's just how
When
it
you
is.
need an agent, a manager will help you bring one up.
Yeah, and right now even the reps writers are having trouble finding agents, I'm told. So
Yep.
again, like the industry is not this one stable thing, unfortunately. Things are going to change, year to year, if not like, season to season. So
Yeah. And then,
yeah.
And then I should say the other two. So out of those four, the other two were referrals. And that just came from all of the work that I'd done in the decade of trying to break in, of meeting people, and 2% of the people I'm meeting going, okay, this is a good guy, this is a smart guy, and becoming aware of my writing. And they weren't willing to necessarily advocate for me, out of the blue, but because I'd had something happen, and they saw that because I set up that one meeting, I got two more out of that. You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah.
That's how that happens. You set up that one and you're rallying your network and saying, hey, I started manager meetings. Can you introduce me to this person? And it's so much easier once you have one person interested to suddenly have more and more people willing to read it, and quickly.
It snowballs, doesn't it?
Yes. And you got to create your own heat, in that way.
Yeah.
You have to.
There's still like shades of high school. It's kind of a popularity contest at some point, right?
It's subjective. So
yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, this has all been great. I can ask you 50 more questions of my own, but I'm gonna hit the questions that we have. If you have a question, drop it here. There's already kind of a good bunch here. So let's
Don't
go
be
through
shy,
them.
everybody. Go ahead and ask the questions.
It's the voice of God from above.
The voice of God. Okay, do you want me to come back on or no?
No, it's all right. You can stay there.
I can stay off.
You can stay off.
But I also wanted to know, like, what advice you would give yourself. Okay, I feel weird asking the question, not being seen. Okay, so what advice would you go back and give yourself, like, that you wish you knew, besides maybe pack the birth bag and have it with you at all times?
I think I would have told my past self, and I've said this before, but I would say, be nicer to yourself. I beat the absolute out of myself when I was going through the process of trying to break in, because I kept telling myself I ought to be doing better. I ought to, I ought to be further along. I ought to. And I still sometimes get into that habit where it's like something's not quite going my way, or I'm not like cracking an idea quick enough, and I remind myself to be nice. And I think this is an incredibly difficult thing, and it's an admirable journey to go on, just to like want to do this. And the fact that you're doing it is so much more courageous than 98% of the people out there. So just be kind to yourself as you're going through it, because you don't gain any. I mean, light a fire under your ass, get the work done for sure, but be nice to yourself as you're doing it. Because it's, the people that I know that don't end up succeeding, it's because they burn out, and they burn out because they beat themselves up. And that's the number one reason why. So just be kind, just be nice to yourself. That'd be the one thing I would tell my past self to do.
That's excellent advice. How many years were you writing before you got this break?
I mean, I wrote my first play at 21, so close to 15 years.
Yeah.
I've been writing. I've been actively trying to break into the film industry for that. So a long time. And
overnight wonder.
Right. It's important to keep in mind, because Tripper Clancy years ago did a good thread on this. He had won in 2010, I think, I want to say, for us. And years later, he finally got a movie produced with Fox, and he sold a bunch of specs and so forth. And he was joking that he was just an overnight success. And it's like, no, he lived a whole life practically. I think it was like 10 years. That's pretty much kind of the average. And I think a lot of writers, too many writers, get frustrated when things are not going their way after like literally 6 months or a year or 2 years, where they're like, oh, I'm not placing in contests, or no one's responding to my queries. And I've been writing for, 3 years now. And it's like, well, something haywire somewhere, and you'll figure it out, or you'll kind of piece things together on your own. And there's so many resources now, anyways. We're living in a good landscape as far as like resources, free resources, and otherwise. So like this symposium,
I was
for
gonna
example.
say.
Sign up today.
Which is why you should be taking advantage of it, asking lots of questions.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of which, here's one. Well, I can answer this one. Do you recommend concentrating on TV or features in terms of getting something produced?
I mean, that totally depends on who you are and where you live, and all, there's a number of variables. But TV right now is very tough.
Yeah.
I know a lot of TV writers that are out of work. The number of productions that are down in terms of what's selling. Good luck getting selling a pilot right now. Versus on the film side, the spec market looks like it's finally coming back. The other thing that's changed about the TV landscape is that nowadays, for a show to sell, you have to have a showrunner attached, very much in the same way that you used to really need a director attached to a spec, in a package. And that's kind of a new thing from over the last. It started before the strike, but it really became, I think, a necessity after the strike. And so that really just is limiting, because it's like, all right, how many showrunners are these studios going to trust to run a TV show? 500, 1,000, and then they're never incentivized to attach to something if they can get a job of something that's actually already going, right? Because one's a hypothetical job and one is a job that they know is going to, they're going to make $500,000 or not or whatever, and that's what they need for the year. And so they go off and do that thing rather, so I guess what I'm saying is having someone attach and then attach long enough to stay through the pitch process, right? And then also it's like, then it doesn't, by the way, nothing ever really truly stays yours. And that's another thing, is that this is a collaborative business. But, and especially as a writer, right? Like if you become a showrunner and you're writing the shows that you care about, that's about as much control as you'll ever have in this business. But getting to that level is, that's 20 years down the road. And for those lucky few that get there.
Features.
So right now,
it's
unwrapped, unproduced writers, please write your features, right?
Yes, but let me qualify that one though. If you really want to write TV, you have no interest in features, your dream is to become a TV writer, don't write a feature. Just keep writing pilots. It's not like managers aren't signing TV writers. You're still if you write an amazing pilot, you're gonna get some sort of a meeting, your foot in the door. I promise. If you're open to doing both, I would concentrate on features at the moment. Unless you have an idea for like the next Lost or the next, Paradise or some big high concept show. I will say, just from a few industry friends, I don't know, things are kind of opening up a little bit, and an unknown writer can, I don't know, get a showrunner attached, sell the show, if the concept is breathtaking enough, right? So. As with everything, the answer is I don't know. We'll see. So let me hit this other question. I wanted to save that for last, but let's do it now. What would thrill you about a script that you read? Or write, or a script, or like what kind of concept, I guess, would make you excited? What kind of story, or the elements in that script?
I mean, I think the big thing for me, if it's clear who I'm rooting for, that's a script I'm going to finish. Sometimes there are like scripts where it's like, I don't know who I'm rooting for, or I don't care about the people.
Yes.
And that can be a real turnoff. Another thing I think about it is like, I like to feel things. I would like to feel something. And by the way, me laughing counts as feeling.
That's an emotion.
Eliciting some sort of emotional reaction for me is like a really good thing in terms of like something that I'm reading.
Yeah.
You know, and then I think the last thing is like, I hate when I get ahead of scripts and I'm like, I know how this is structured and what the formula is going to be. And I love when I love being surprised. I love being surprised. And
Yeah.
by the way, this is me, and this is not necessarily the same as what executives are going to want.
No, it's the same. I mean, trust me, it's that's pretty good advice, I think.
Yeah. So make me feel something, surprise me, and have me rooting for somebody. And you know, yeah, I'll love it.
Yeah, if you buy into my theory is if you buy into as a reader, into the first 15, 20 pages and you're on board, then the writer can kind of do whatever they want and they'll take you on all these little weird winding pathways. The setup is so important in building that emotional connection to the characters and to the story, right?
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, look, I mean, if a lot of you, if you read the scripts that make the annual blacklist or you read scripts that win the big fellowships or the big competitions, they're all going to have that same through line, and they're just going to be fun to read, and they're going to elicit some sort of emotional response from you. And it seems very basic in terms of like the history of storytelling, but I think a lot of writers they come at the script from, I don't know, a different angle, like, oh, what's marketable, and I'm just going to write the really marketable script that looks exactly like this other movie, and it becomes kind of soulless. And if it's soulless, that will 100% show on the page, and you'll kind of lose them. So anyway, that's a whole different whole
Yeah.
different Zoom.
While you're picking another question, can I
Yeah,
move Karen's question? Karen is a regular here. With all
Karen.
the
Yeah, yes, sir.
yeah, with all the reorganization, selling, buying, spin-offs in the system right now, what's your current advice about networking? It seems you could build one and then lose it quickly. Maybe that's just the game, but wanted to check.
Let me see if I can find it in written form. Who? Hold up.
About networking, just like with, you know,
Yeah. Current advice about networking. I mean, you're asking a fellow introvert how to network, which is,
probably
so
why the question is being asked.
but buyer beware of the answer. First off, it depends on your personality type. My wife is what I like to call a genius extrovert, in which case she can do whatever she wants and it's going to work, right? For me, I don't do small talk particularly well. So I just have to like form genuine connections with people, and then those people that I like, I reach out to. And I and then there's also that case of like there's those executives or there are those people that are like fans of yours that you don't necessarily get or understand, and that I'm learning to also like to feed that and like to have that level of respect, going back. um but I do think it's easier for me as an introvert when it's genuine, when it comes from a place of like a genuine connection, and I like the person, I like their writing, I like their work, I like where they're working or what their sensibility is, whatever type of networking it is, like whether it's a fellow writer or director or an executive, I appreciate that. Uh, that's my advice, is that when it comes from that genuine space, it's easier to do and maintain. And I think it's probably more valuable to have like 5 genuine connections than like 100 lunches in 2 years that you never talk to them again.
I would
Um,
highlight that one. Yes.
so yeah, that would be it.
Yeah. Don't hang out with losers. It's my addendum. So, I mean, it's hard to spot, but eventually and you're like, but I can still use them to advance no, just end the relationship. It's my suggestion. Thanks. There is 2 questions that are kind of in tandem, and you kind of answered the first one, but this is actually a good one, and I think you should clarify. You
Okay.
got a 30% positive response rate to your queries. What do you attribute that to? Is it doing the research that you did, and they were, just showed them that you were serious about it, or what do you think it was?
There's a specific format for queries, right?
Right.
That's out there. I'm not going to go through that right now.
Yeah.
Right. A couple things. One was the specific research for sure. Another was I had a great sort of opening line about why they should read the rest of the email, right?
Yeah.
Talking about the finalist placement right? You know, right up front and this, that, and the other thing. So it was one, it was about the specificity of it. I'm reaching out to you for this specific reason. You are the right person for this reason, right? I am not just targeting you because you're another manager or an agent on the list. I'm targeting you for this reason. I think that's incredibly important. And listen, I think the easiest way to answer this question for yourself is put yourself in their shoes. What's the email that you're going to respond to? What's the script that you're going to read?
Right.
Okay. Well, there's a great hook in the email. Oh, wow. They did their research and they know who I am and the type of people I rep and are talking about that specifically in a kind of uncanny way. Those are things that would hit you, right? So
Yeah.
I think, again, it's not just another checkbox. You just try to be thoughtful with it, and I think you'll get a higher response rate. And also, if you're that thoughtful with your query, how thoughtful were you with your screenplay? You know,
Right. The query is so important, and the log line is also so important. I know that some of you, I see some names here that are on X still, and they're looking at all this advice that's coming through their feed. And some people are like, well, you don't even really need a log line, and which is confounding to me because you might not need a specific. Actually, you do. You still need the log line. I'm not even arguing that, but like for sake of argument, you might not need that one specific sentence, but you're going to need to pitch your material at some point because how is that person going to request the script?
it never ends, by the way. Even
It never
even with
ends.
my managers, I'm
Right.
like, you know, the thing I'm working on is this meets this, or what, you know, some
Yeah.
like, but it never ends. You're constantly pitching, you know, to everyone all the time. So it's get used to it.
Yes, and wouldn't you say like with queries? I know you don't read a lot of queries, but I do anyway on the publishing side. And the ones that get too cute with no substance are that's it. It's a pass, right? You kind of want to have that Goldilocks zone where you want your voice and your personality to come through in the query. It shouldn't be too dry and overly formal, I guess, or overly serious. But it should kind of match your vibe, I guess, while remaining in that rubric or that structure that you mentioned, which you can find anywhere
And if you're
online.
an incredibly serious person, then it can be incredibly serious, and that's fine.
You're an incredibly serious person, and I'm sure it was very down to
I'm so
business.
serious. I'm so serious all the time.
I will say as an aside, I remember vividly after because that was the first year we did a Zoom event because it was the pandemic, obviously. And you know, I had people kind of like stay after and I'll answer any questions. And it was just you and I think one other writer that stayed behind. And you were like, hey, jotting down notes and like maybe not literally like this with the quill or anything, but you were
I still have
taking
the quill.
notes.
Fine.
Yeah, he has the quill. I signed it for him with a different quill. No, but you were taking you were listening and you had a lot of questions and I was like, you know, I'm trying to help as much as possible, but you were so proactive. And I mean, everybody from that year was proactive and
Yeah.
they are in almost every year, but it just struck me as like, all right, this is someone who's really hustling, who's investing in their career, which I think is important to keep in mind.
Well, I'd also learned at that point, you know, I'd had other opportunities that I hadn't taken advantage of, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't know when my film premiered at Santa Barbara that I should check in with the press desk first day. Nobody told me that, you know. Stuff like that. And like I didn't really share it as widely as I should have, you know, with agents and managers and all of this. So I learned the hard way. You know, by the time I got to you, I knew that, you know, this was a moment, you know, when the iron was hot and it was time to strike and it was time to take advantage. It was time to query, you know, it was time to hustle. So I think that's the other thing is taking advantage of those opportunities.
And speaking of not beating yourself up over it, a lot of writers here are probably listening to you and being like, "Oh, I should have done this, this, and this a year ago or 2 years ago." Like, don't worry about it. You're gonna make mistakes and you're gonna say dumb things in an email and you're gonna make bad impressions on industry people and you're gonna say the stupidest things that you will harp on forever. I do it every day. Jeannie knows exactly how that process works with me.
Yeah, I mean,
don't beat yourself up over it though.
There was somebody I ran into somebody that I sent a terrible email to. And it wasn't like it was vindictive or anything. It just was a bad email, and I just pretend I didn't. And I said hi and whatever, and you know, and I mean, like you know, it's just like I go through the math and I'm like, how many years earlier could I have broken in had I done everything correctly? And it's like, but hindsight's 2020, and it's
But
Yeah.
maybe you wouldn't have written the script that you wrote,
Probably not.
right? I mean, you would have been on something else. I mean, like years ago, I wrote an article when I was editor-in-chief of Script Magazine called Dear New Screenwriter. And it was basically saying all the stuff I did wrong. Like
It was a 9-part series.
you're gonna fuck up, and then but don't worry, you'll fuck up again. Like like all this stuff. And then at the end, it was just like, and join Twitter. Trust me.
Right.
That did change things for me. But yeah, everybody makes tons of mistakes. You can't second guess everything. It's over. Move on.
Yeah.
Move on.
Yep.
Right.
Be nice to yourself.
Use it as a learning experience. Yeah. Sorry.
Bruce asks, do both of you see the
was
flow of movie making overseas because of cheaper costs and better incentives being long term, or does that affect writers as much? Like shooting
should they keep that in
locations or
mind,
cheaping?
basically?
Yeah, should they be thinking about that? Foreign rights and foreign
I mean,
film.
I think you should always be keeping budgets in mind. But and so if you do want to understand how production is happening and the fact that they're going to go shoot in Eastern Europe rather than going to go shoot in Paris, for instance, right?
Yeah.
Like that, it does shift budgets, but again, it's like it's them trying to make money. And I don't know whether it affects your writing outside of like, are you writing for the appropriate budget for the appropriate genre type of thing.
Yeah.
I don't know whether on the writing level, I don't know whether it affects it more than that.
I will say you kind of have to have your finger on the cultural pulse. If we had a script that was set in the Middle East, and it was a fantastic script, action script, and it's been hard because they're like, well, it's all set in the Middle East. And I'm like, well, yeah, I guess you're right. And it's like, how that's perceived, not just in terms of the logistics of shooting, but, the marketability and like who you're going to cast in it. And there's all these little variables. So, that does play a factor, I think. If you had a script that's set in Moscow and you can't shoot it anywhere else but Moscow, like, I don't know, maybe that's not the right time for that.
If you're going to detail about, this building in the background and it's a big motif or something. I mean, like you're shooting yourself in the foot a little bit, but I mean, like,
right.
The Old Man was a TV show that, right, like took place in Afghanistan, right? And they shot it mostly here in LA on a movie ranch, right? So
right.
it's and that was in part because the star of the show is was too old to be traveling too far away from his home. So they again, like I think it changes budgets, and I think that the amount of money that the film industry is making off projects has really shifted over the last decade. And that should come into your writing. But in terms of how they make things, I mean, don't write something into a script that, I mean, the joke back in the day was write camels in Central Park, right? Because you can't get camels. Right. You have to walk them through the tunnel or whatever it is to get them into New York, and or elephants or whatever it is, right? Like
it's elephants.
It's elephants. It's not camels. Yeah. Well, maybe it's camels too. I mean, I don't know about can camels go over a bridge? I don't know that camels. I think they have to go through a tunnel as well. I don't know. But the point is like it's a really difficult thing to do and very expensive. So don't do those things.
Right.
Because it's kind of just shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah. Very serious question. Did you name your child Spec? You don't have to give us the real name. I'm assuming it's not Spec, but maybe it is. Spec Selander. It's a hell of a name. It's a second baseman name.
Maybe that's just the middle name.
Oh man.
Don't tell us the name of your child.
Yeah, that's all
too
right.
personal.
Give me a list of their fears. Yeah, no.
Yeah.
There is one more. I guess I answered that one technically. Oh, that's another discussion. I don't want to talk about AI on this one. Unless you have thoughts on AI and if it's a threat for writers.
I don't know. I haven't been impressed so far.
Neither have I. It's not. The answer's no.
A lot of it, yeah, I haven't either.
I mean, you know,
Right.
I think eventually, eventually it'll be a threat for everything. We'll just become obsolete and we'll hang out
Yeah.
all day and we'll play dominoes and eat snacks
Right.
and AI, it'll do everything, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, but like, why worry about that? Because,
Right. Once it
um,
gets smart enough to write a really, really good screenplay, it'll be smart enough to do crazy wartime shit. And I don't think it'll matter what the film industry is doing. So
Yeah, the world will be over.
yeah,
well,
don't worry about that.
well, either they'll end the world or they'll get bored of us, or you know what I mean? Like, who knows? But it's, by the time it gets to that point, I mean, like they're going to put lawyers out of work, contract lawyers out of work first, right? They're going to put a
Right.
lot of other professions are going to be out of work first. It's going to be a real problem for humanity. But I really think that AI is an output medium and writing is an input medium.
Yeah,
And
that's a
that's
good
how
way
I
to
think
frame
about
it.
it.
Yeah.
So it's, you have to input something and prompt it, and then it can output it. But writing is not about an out, it's an input. You have to be putting the thought in constantly. And so that's why I don't think AI is very well built for it. I think it'll be one
Right.
of the last things that it gets good at. So
The writing side anyway, but there's some other parts of filmmaking, obviously, that's going to get affected.
yeah, and that it'll change budgets, 5-10 years from now. You know, um,
Yeah, on the bright side, please don't yell at me. But on the bright side, maybe that lowers budgets, so we get more films out there, and it gives more opportunities to writers and directors and
It,
other
I,
people.
yeah, it's just about film crews. That's going to be
Yeah.
and I one day I think it's going to be like, oh my God, people used to go places and make things in person.
Yeah.
What?
Right.
Like, how do they do that?
Just like now we're
Right.
saying people used to talk on the telephone.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, 50 years from now, the idea of people going to a location to shoot something will be like, what?
Well,
No.
I remember watching the Jetsons as a little kid. Now I'm aging myself. And they had these just like this, like a video phone, and Jane Jetson put on her fake face for the call. And here we are. Like
Yep, here we are.
here we are.
You like sci-fi, Crosby. You can write like the sci-fi dystopian thing where everything's just like fine and there's no conflict. And then it ends. That's a good thing I'm not your manager or your reps.
Just write a movie that's a tea party 50 years from now.
Yeah, we're all just hanging. Why can't we go to the movies and just watch a bunch of people hanging out and like be a part of that? Anyway, I'm reading your scripts, you guys, annually. I'm so sorry.
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna squeeze in two more quick ones. The questions
And then
tonight
I have
weren't
one
like
quick one too.
okay, and then we can wrap.
Yeah.
One person asked, you mentioned this before, but you didn't query producers. This was all managers, that first
Yeah.
batch of 20, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't query any producers. It's one of those like catch 22s that you know, producer can get you a manager, but if they want to, option it or this, that, and the other thing, but a manager is, if they really love your script, one of the first things they're going to ask is like, where has this been exposed? Like, what exposure has it had? Right?
Totally.
Because, and if it's been out to 10, 15 producers that have passed on it, then that script is not as attractive to them. So, that's kind of like I also didn't have like crazy producer contacts or anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I would err on the side of trying to get a rep because they're going to be more experienced at navigating working with a producer. Um, that being said, people have done that. That's worked out.
I think it depends on the project. If it's a smaller indie thing
Yes.
and, you want to try and kind of almost package it yourself, which you're going to have to, in a way, do anyway. You get a producer on board and then you get talent attached and kind of go that route. One of our semifinalists from this year is doing that. A really good script, and wants to make his directorial debut, and he's kind of doing it himself, and he's hustling on it, and he's got like financing in place already and everything. So
That's
it really
incredible.
does depend on the script and the project and the direction you want to take with it. So,
That's a
Jeannie, you had a final question for Crosby.
Yeah. If your child who is not named Spec can came to you and said, Dad, I want to be a writer, what would you tell them?
I mean, in general, that this is more of like a parenting philosophy thing than
Right.
anything. Are you saying like what would I tell them in terms of like
I
do
mean,
this
would
or
you
don't do
encourage
that or
it? Would you just be like, I kind of feel like you would be like, okay, then let's sit down, let's talk. I'm going to tell you all the bad stuff first. And then if you tell me you still want to do it, okay. But I
no,
don't know if that's what you would do. That's what I would do.
I mean, listen, I think for me, like I'm a stubborn SOB. Like it wouldn't have mattered if somebody had sat me down and told me all of this. You know what I mean? And like maybe that
Right.
stubbornness was in part because I was told how difficult it was. Um, no, I mean like my parenting philosophy is like to be supportive, to be supportive. And that's it. I would just be incredibly supportive and help them in any way that I can, and that's it. You know,
Yeah.
Such a good dad.
I wouldn't,
Good answer.
like I mean, I just wouldn't like why kill something like that? Why kill, there's this idea from Creativity Inc., right? Like protect the new, right? When there's a new idea or, and if you kind of extrapolate that out to like raising people, like don't kill passion, don't kill, you know, joy, like there's,
That's Hollywood's job.
yeah, I mean, I was gonna say there's a whole world that could do that, but then that's so dark. Oh my God. Um, just yeah, I mean, like the and then
You're
in
referencing,
general as well. I don't think I'd say that, outside of my kids. I don't know whether I'd say that to anyone. Like, it's so
yeah,
hard, don't do it. And like I would never.
everything's hard.
It-
What
it's
else are
in-
you gonna
Everything
do?
is hard.
it's
Right.
incredibly hard. It's incredibly hard. Um, but like we all get one life to live, and you got to be happy with the choices. So.
Someone told me they wanted to, this was recently, someone told me they wanted to quit screenwriting and just go to law school. And I'm like, what is that? You think that's easier? What are you talking about?
But if that's what they want to do, they should
If
do
that's what they
that
want to
then.
do,
Like
do
if
it.
they're not,
Exactly. But they were
yeah.
saying it's going to be easier. And they said this unironically. And I'm like, I don't think that's the case, but whatever. Why
Don't
would
become
you?
a contract lawyer because AI is going to replace you.
Right. See? On that note,
Uh,
Uh,
we would
well,
like to
this
thank
was
everyone for
this
attending.
was
Can I just
fun.
say, by the way, uh,
yeah.
we started with the same number of attendees that are still here. We got like 0 drop-offs, which I think is a
Woohoo.
symposium-free event first.
Wow.
Clearly, Crosby and I are very charming.
Okay. Well, before we leave,
Magnetic, you might say.
I'm gonna do my job so I don't get fired before we
Okay.
leave.
I don't think you're gonna.
Next week, we have Tom Vaughn coming on to talk about rewriting the
All right.
scene. And then we have another one that's really cool. I'm actually looking forward to this one. It's called Privacy for Writers. Why writers should care about privacy in a connected world and what they can do about it. And this is a woman from the military who's going to talk to us all about like your online platform and how you can maintain some sense of privacy while still trying to sell stuff. And we have a bunch of other stuff coming up. Book idea workshop, marketing the big 5 way, blah, blah, blah. Lots of stuff.
Cool.
So,
We do.
yes. So I'm going to send the recording out to everybody in an email tomorrow. So, and it'll also be up on our site as well. But thank you, Crosby.
Crosby
you.
or Jim, thank you for
Thanks,
taking
You
the time.
guys. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure. I owe you guys so much. And just to say, like about Pipeline Media as an organization, like they really do work that is hard and that a lot of people aren't doing. And like you guys are just genuinely good people. And
Oh, thank
I
you.
owe a lot to you. So please
Well, that
for everyone listening, like submit to the contests, get feedback from them, use them. Like they are writers supporting writers, and like they're doing, it's like incredibly selfless, like what they do. And it's not said enough, so please, be supportive. And without them I wouldn't be here. So
Well, I obviously greatly appreciate that, and I wish we've kind of I won't go into the whole spiel of like how we've structured our contest now, but like we pick such a small group of quarterfinalists and semifinalists every year because we go back and we re-review those scripts and give them notes now and consider it for industry circulation. I wish we could do that for more people because I know there's when you submit to a contest and you don't make the cut, then that's it, right? But yeah, we do our best. Free stuff like this through Symposium hopefully helps too. I think this was a great session, by the way, and I honestly, it's one of our best ones as far as like the advice that I think we've kind of imparted to newer end writers that been around a while. So
And for anyone who if we didn't get to a question or something, I'm on Twitter. Just ask me. I'll get to it.
Oh, lovely.
If we missed any questions, just at me, and I'll get to it at some point.
Yeah, you can ask me on Twitter too, but no one ever wants to talk to me on Twitter anymore. And I kind of prefer it. So good luck, Crosby.
It's that I literally came back on just for this because I got I haven't used I don't use Twitter very much anymore. But
right, yeah.
But
unplugging isn't bad. Yeah.
Say what?
Unplugging is not a bad thing in the modern era.
Very good
I can
thing.
use this week as an example, but thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you everybody for coming.
Recording will be up soon as well, as you mentioned.